All right, let's get right into it. We have all had that sinking feeling in our stomachs. You see a drip from the ceiling, or worse, find a flooded basement. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the whole messy business of water damage. We'll use a pro's perspective to see how you really get from that moment of pure chaos back to having total control.
Everything really kicks off with this question, but the answer isn't what you think. It has nothing to do with your water bill. The real cost of water damage is measured in time, and that clock starts ticking the very second that water shows up where it's not supposed to be.
And this is the first number that really truly matters. 24 to 48 hours. That is the entire window you have before a simple water issue starts to become a much bigger biological problem. We're talking about mold. Once you cross that line, the cleanup gets way more complicated, way more expensive, and frankly, a lot more hazardous to your health. So if we know that clock is ticking loud and fast, what's the benchmark for the pros? It's this, 60 minutes. That is the industry's gold standard for response time. And why so fast? Well, because every single minute that water just sits there, it's soaking deeper, it's spreading wider. The difference between someone showing up in 1 hour versus, say, 6 hours can literally be the difference between just drying a room out and having to tear it down to the studs and rebuild it. So that brings us to our first big idea here. To really tackle the problem, you gotta reframe it in your mind. Don't just think of it as a leaky pipe or a failed appliance. Think of water damage as a sudden, chaotic intruder that has just broken into your home. Now, to make all this real, we're going to zoom in on Washington, D.C. as a sort of case study. Why? Because its unique mix of history, architecture, and climate creates the absolute perfect storm for water problems. I mean, these are challenges that lots of cities have, but D.C. kind of has them all rolled into one. First off, you have to look underground. In some of DC's most historic neighborhoods, the water mains feeding homes aren't just old, some of them date back to the early 1900s. And these pipes don't just spring a tiny leak, no, they can fail catastrophically, turning a quiet street into a flash flood with absolutely no warning. Now here's where it gets really interesting. A city's greatest charm can actually be its biggest weakness. All those beautiful historic DC row homes, well, they're often built on this dense clay soil that just loves to trap moisture right up against the foundation. You combine that with old, uninsulated plumbing, and bam, you've got the perfect recipe for seeping basements and pipes that burst every single winter. And if that wasn't enough, you've got to fight the air itself. See, DC is sandwiched between two rivers, the Potomac and the Anacostia, which means for most of the year, the air is just thick with humidity. And that's not just uncomfortable for us, it's a huge problem in a water emergency. It makes mold grow faster and turns the simple job of drying a place out into a really complex scientific challenge. Okay, so the intruder is in the house. Now what? Well, before a single fan gets turned on, the very first job is to decode the damage. That means figuring out exactly what kind of water you're dealing with. Because, as you're about to see, not all water is created equal. Not by a long shot. The pros, they never ever guess. They operate according to this incredibly strict science-based protocol called the IIC-RC S500 standard. The easiest way to think of it is as the official rule book for the entire restoration industry. It makes sure that every single pro out there is using the same safety standards and the same science to get the job done right. And this table right here, this breaks down the single most critical part of that rulebook, classifying the water. Category 1 is what they call clean water. Think a busted supply line under your sink. Minimal risk. Category 2 is gray water. It's contaminated. Think of water from a dishwasher or a washing machine overflow. But category 3, that's black water. And that is the real danger. We're talking raw sewage backups or floodwaters from a river. It is considered grossly unsanitary, and you need serious protective gear just to be in the same room with it. So, once the water is identified, the pros open up their playbook. And I want to be clear, this is not a frantic, panicked cleanup with mops and towels. It's a methodical, 3-phase process. It's designed to systematically bring order back from total chaos. The whole job really boils down to these 3 steps. First, you assess the damage and use powerful pumps to extract all the standing water you can see. Second, you place all this specialized equipment to start drying the structure, and that includes the moisture hiding inside the walls that you can't see. And third, and this is so important, you have to verify with scientific meters that the building is actually dry before you can officially close out the job. And you just can't run this playbook with stuff you rent from the local hardware store. No way. We're talking about high-tech gear, like thermal imaging cameras that let you literally see water inside a wall, calibrated moisture meters that give you exact readings, and then you've got the real workhorses, massive dehumidifiers and high-velocity air movers that team up to create a powerful drying environment. This all leads us to the actual science behind the solution, and honestly, it's pretty cool. The whole process is governed by something called psychrometrics. Now, I know it sounds super complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's just the science of how air, moisture, and temperature all work together. By controlling those variables, you can create the perfect conditions to literally pull trapped water vapor out of materials like wood and drywall. So this raises the big question. Why can't you just set up a bunch of regular fans? Well, this comparison makes it crystal clear. Standard fans, they just blow wet, humid air around. In a place like DC, that's like trying to dry yourself off inside a sauna. It just doesn't work. But commercial dehumidifiers, they physically rip the moisture molecules out of the air, creating this super dry vortex that forces the building materials to let go of the water they've absorbed. It's a whole different ballgame. So, okay, we've looked at the problem, the science, the pro playbook. Let's bring it all back home. Why does any of this really matter to you, your health, and, your single biggest investment? When it comes right down to it, it all boils down to this one simple question. You're facing a sudden, incredibly stressful, and totally unbudgeted expense. It is completely natural to ask, is paying for all of this really worth it? Can I just handle it myself? And the answer, based on everything we've just seen, is a resounding yes. You see, professional restoration isn't just a cleaning bill. It's an investment. It's an investment in protecting your home from the silent destruction of structural rot. It's about safeguarding your family's health from hidden mold. And on a practical level, it provides the meticulous, data-driven documentation that your insurance company is absolutely going to demand. The cost of doing it wrong is almost always higher than the cost of doing it right the first time. And that leaves us with one final, crucial thought. The crew is gone, the equipment is packed up, your house is finally dry. Life feels like it's back to normal. The immediate crisis is over. But the experience should leave you with a really important question. Are you truly prepared for the next time? Because mastering this process isn't just about recovering from one disaster. It's about building resilience for whatever comes next.